topic today.
Come
It is
on
definitely come in, join us. But it's definitely I'm putting it in the hot topic category. And the topic is mothers are responsible for the evolution of men. Now, it's not to say fathers don't play a part. Don't get me wrong. We're going to talk about that too. But I would say specifically, mothers are really we hold it in our hands. We are the ones who can change the future when it comes to kids, our children in general. And we certainly are the greatest influencers on our sons when it comes to who they will be as adult men, future parents themselves, future partners themselves, future contributors to society. We hold in our hands with our sons that greatest influence factor. So we're going to talk about that today. Women, we've continued, if you really go back even just 100 years ago, think about how much women have evolved in terms of their roles in society, in terms of their roles in their family, in terms of just how they contribute, what they do. I mean, in 100 years, this has drastically changed for women. However, I really call into question, and I actually have like old school blogs back in the day. I'm going to really, pre-Facebook. Do you remember what it was? What did we have on social media pre-Facebook?
Oh, MySpace.
MySpace, okay. I had a blog on MySpace, and one of the things I called out was like the lack of evolution in men. How much have men evolved from an emotional IQ perspective?
Like, think about it from 100 years ago. We were at the riverbank washing clothes and then like going home and cooking meals. Like, that's what women did.
And women didn't have option to
have a career.
There was
no option to do anything. We couldn't vote. We couldn't work. Like, there was no education. I mean, everything. Mm-hmm. And look at what we're doing now.
Right.
Just look at what we're doing. And we're not doing it all. We've just had to learn how to delegate and how to manage it all. We're still managing it all. Right. But we're not physically doing it all anymore. And then look at men, what they were doing back then.
Actually, maybe I would call you out and say we are doing it all. And maybe that's the issue.
We're handling it all. Making sure it all gets handled.
Is that now in a relationship of any kind, and I would say potentially the exception of obviously a lesbian couple, so that would be the questionable situation. But in any other partnership, I would say that more often than not, the mother is also working. She's also the default parent to the kids. And we've talked again, previous videos, we've talked about default parenting, so look that up as well. But she's the default parent. She is still the main person responsible for the home. And I'm not talking about like the obvious stuff like taking out the trash or doing the dishes or, doing laundry and stuff like that. That's not the stuff I'm talking about in the house. I'm talking about the details, right? The stuff that the non-detail organized person in that partnership doesn't even pay attention to, like the organization, who's changing out clothes seasonally for their kids or when they're small every 2 to 3 months. Those little details, the dusting, the, get rid of old stuff, like going back through all the stuff that's in storage. Like, I mean, I literally could sit here and just go on and on and on. And I would venture to say that, again, I'm going to be stereotypical here. Typically, it's the husband who's the one not paying attention to those details. Now, that husband, by the way, could be the main person cleaning.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen that a lot. So I don't want to take that away from, husbands and fathers out there. I've seen a lot of times that they're the more cleaner person. Do you know what I mean? So, like, they are the one more likely to be doing, like, the general cleaning in the household, but still not doing the details.
And I will add, especially if my husband's watching or watches later, he will do it all. It's just that he doesn't always see it all. Like, yes. I'm usually the one that, like, is the project manager. Like, this needs to be done. He's happy to do it. He just doesn't always see it the way that I do without attention to detail.
Right.
So, not saying that their husbands are lazy. Archie, not saying that. After this, I'll add a link for a GoFundMe account for Archie.
He's definitely in need of moral support. So, full disclosure out there for that.
Just exit out now, Arch.
So, but yeah, again, I think that the reality is that, yes, thankfully through the women's movement and the evolution of women over the last 100 years, like, we have options. We have the ability as women to choose if we want to have a career, be a working mother, what kind of careers what kind of education that we want to have. I mean, we have, thankfully, again, due to the women's movement, that has happened, for women, and we fought for ourselves, and I think that evolution is continuing to happen, not just societally, right, and certainly globally, right. We're even seeing countries who have strong patriarchal societies and cultures. Women are starting to really stand up for themselves and say, guess what, folks? Whether you want it to be this way or not, we are absolutely equals, and we are absolutely of equal value to you. And let's throw in a little kind of superhero note. Women can produce life. So let's just also be clear about that part of it, right? So those things, I think societally we're continuing to see growth and movement, but where I think we're kind of like still behind is in the home and in the family, right? I think that we're in the midst of another movement right now, and I would just say, and I don't say this in a way to try to scare men or husbands, or partners of any kind in a relationship. I don't try to say this in a way to scare you, but I think that there is a lot of rumblings in terms of conversations between women and actualities that I'm seeing occur right now where we're living longer, right? And women are recognizing like their children could be off to college and they could be empty nesters by the time they're in their late 40s, early 50s. And because of the disconnect and the lack of connection and genuine intimacy, emotionally and genuine care about their wants and needs, and they can also financially stand on their own 2 feet and support themselves because they've been career mothers the entire time. I just know, unfortunately, as a matter of fact, there are several women I know in my life that are really starting to wonder, I don't think I want to stick around in this marriage after my kids are grown. And what I've seen happen in the circumstances where this has actually happened already, with people that I know, that they were just kind of holding out. They're cordial with their spouse. They get along. They basically function as roommates and co-parents and partners and even really, really good friends, right? But when it comes to their emotional needs not being met and being disregarded, and on top of it, they don't feel protected, right? Like, I think part of that intimacy that women often look for is not to be dominated, but to be protected.
Yeah.
And those are two very, very, very different things.
That's huge.
And when a woman doesn't feel protected and cared for in that way, and her emotional needs are not being met, and they're constantly being minimized, and they're constantly being disregarded, there is a limit now because women don't, factually speaking, need a man financially to take care of them. So if all of this has been going on for 10, 15, 20 years, and the kids have made their way out of the home and they're off to college and leading successful lives, I'm seeing this happen more and more where women are like, I hope we can get along after this, but I'm done.
Like, let's
in this
call
relationship.
It like straight. If we can make the money, like we no longer have that need, if we can have the babies, what's really left that we are seeking in our life? And it's emotional connection. And if we can't get that out of our own relationships, then we're going to move on. Yes. Eventually. And we know, like Angela was sharing, we know people who have made this decision, that we've had conversations with in our personal life, and it's made us realize, like, gosh, men really need to be evolving as well, to keep,
And I will say, guys, it's a pretty significant sampling. I'll just put it to you that way. In terms of how many women I've had this conversation with over the course of, like, let's put it into a specific time frame, the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's a pretty common theme that we're hearing. So, what does this mean as we're segueing into our responsibility for the future?
Right. And kind of almost like, let's flip the script.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can all like sit around and bitch and moan, right? And we can say,
which we do. This is how we have these conversations. We go out to dinner with our girlfriends, and these are the conversations that happen.
Yeah.
But then we walk away from these conversations, and what are we doing to foster change?
Right. And really kind of looping this full circle back to the beginning of this conversation is, it is in our hands as mothers to be the greatest influencers in supporting the evolution of men. And specifically when it comes to their emotional IQ, when it comes to their ability to connect with their partners, and the ability to contribute not just to a big picture society, but to contribute in their individual home. And the whole bringing home the bread and making the money is just not cutting it anymore in terms of being a genuine contributor to a family. So what do we do as mothers to ensure that we don't continue enabling this, and which means we have to stop raising sons the way that it's historically been done? And so let's talk about that. Like,
so if you see something, like part of the burden of being a conscious person and being aware is that if you see it, you know, are you doing anything about it? And I struggle with this because I'm like, oh, I wish I could unsee that because now I'm going to have to do something about it. And it's just exhausting. But like, when you do see something, we always have to look at ourselves and say, how can we contribute? So yeah, we see this common theme with, you know, women that we know in our life. We're hearing the conversations and the rumblings, and we're like, gosh, you know, what can we do to make sure that the future doesn't go in that negative direction where like marriage just doesn't exist anymore because the women have evolved to a place that,
or not marriage doesn't exist, but it doesn't exist in the traditional sense. Like,
yeah,
one of the things I talked about in the previous video that I did was that there just could be an agreement, right? It's more like a short-term agreement versus a long-term one. It's like, hey, you know, me and you partner, we care for each other, we both would like to have children. We agree in terms of values and the way to parent together.
Let's sign an 18-year contract.
Right. Like, it's not a lifelong marriage.
So it can happen that way, and it can go like this. But like, we can also help it to go like this if we pay attention to the way that we're mothering our sons.
Yes.
And a big conversation, so now I know that, I have to do something about it, right? So like a big conversation, I've got a 6-year-old son at home. And a big conversation that I've had with him recently, is to make sure he's aware of how sacred and special women are, and that it's your job as a male to protect females. And the conversation,
I think protection is a good word. Don't get me wrong. I think protection is a good word, but I also think the word is respect, right?
It is
that
respect.
It's not to objectify.
Yes.
You can decide how much of
so
that.
I said what I said to him was, you know, women have this very special and unique gift that we're able to create life. And you, Kyle, my little 6-year-old, you have 2 parents that it's our job to protect you. And Daddy and I will do everything in our power to make sure that you and your sisters are safe. What's your responsibility? Your responsibility is to make sure that women are safe. And I know that you're curious. And I know that they're fun to look at. And they're fun to, like, you know, tease and all of that. But the conversation starts now. And yes, he's only 6, but the conversation starts now about respecting women, knowing that it's your job to make them feel safe and not to objectify them. Mm-hmm. That's just a little piece of what,
like, locker room talk really isn't acceptable.
Yeah.
You know?
That's not what they're there for. They're not there for your pleasure and entertainment.
Right.
Women are there for, really, you need to protect them and keep them safe, make sure that they feel safe.
So one of the, and I always, for me, it's really important when I do these videos, it's not just sharing about my opinion, it's also really sharing, like, why do I have the opinions that I have through sharing with you guys, like, my actual personal life experiences. Even if maybe it's something that I'm embarrassed or ashamed about, I still want to share it with you, because I think, again, the best way to lead people to be more honest and open is to exemplify that yourself.
Yeah.
You know, don't just say you want that from other people, but actually to do it. So
sharing starts the conversation.
Absolutely. So for me, like, the main thing I would like to share with you is being an Asian woman. My mother's Filipina, and, you know, and being raised in a home. My brother and my sister were significantly older than me, but I certainly, as a girl in my home, being raised with an older brother, I certainly got to see the differences in how, as an Asian mother, like, how my mom was in terms of her mothering style.
And her expectations.
Yeah.
You know, too.
And I say this in no way, shape, or form to, like, you know, diminish or take away from the absolute incredible mom that I had, because I say this all the time to people. All the things bad about me are me, and all the things good about me are credited to my parents.
Yeah.
You know, and so, so I say this in a way to say it is really just about recognizing the culture. There was a very, very real culture component at play in terms of what my mom was taught and how she took a combination, as I think everybody does, of like what you learned from your parents and then what you learned in your own personal life experiences, and then kind of combining that and figuring out what kind of parent you want to be. And so the reality was my mom was raised in an Asian culture. She was raised by Asian parents and in Filipino culture specifically. And there is a lot of, how do I say it? Do I just say it the way Angela says it?
There's a lot of
Filipino, a lot of like babying,
yeah,
and over the top. What's the word that you used? We were just talking about
tending to.
Yeah, tending to the boys more than they would with the girls. Like there's a lot of,
let's just say the little boy becomes a little prince. It's just what happens.
Yes. And so then as the kids get older, where a daughter would be expected to learn how to cook and how to clean and how to have like chores and responsibility in the house, like the sons don't. And if they do, it's kind of like limited to taking out the trash.
Yeah.
And again, it's not to say that my brother wasn't doing other stuff in the house. He was, like, he definitely like helped out with yard work and stuff like that. But in general, there was definitely a very clear role definition. Yeah. I feel like that took place in terms of like what was expected from daughters versus what was expected from sons. And I say all that saying that my mom tended to all of us. I mean, honestly, I'm not joking you. She invited us to move back home like for our entire lives. She would have been willing to do our laundry, and the only thing she really wasn't into was cooking. But
she
like
loved
other
to
than
hand feed the children.
Yes, hand feeding. She hand fed all of her grandchildren. If us adult children of hers wanted her, she probably would have still hand fed us. Like that's just who my mom was. She was like the ultimate nurturer.
Well, and not only are we raising, are we potentially doing this, right? Mm-hmm. I've seen it in American culture too, not just in Asian culture. Not only are we potentially catering to or tending to our sons more and having different expectations of our daughters, but then are we also teaching our daughters to tend to their brothers? Like, really, I mean, and it might just come, I know that we debated this a little bit before we got on here, like I called it an instinct. Like I almost have a natural instinct to like baby my son. What the heck? Where does that come from? Whereas like with my daughters, it's more like encouraging them to be independent, but then like literally serving my son.
Yeah.
And why do we do that?
And like an almost like a hypersensitivity to your son's discomfort over the discomfort of your daughter.
It's so funny.
I actually remember this, like when so I have 3 boys and I have 1 girl. And my girl, man, she is like a presence. Okay, like she's literally a balance in terms of the female presence in her home to my 3 boys. And I always thought that I was going to be like a boy mom. I always just felt like I was only going to have boys because I have like kind of like a lot of male energy.
Come to think of it,
yeah.
she holds it down.
She holds it down. And she's also an incredible protector.
Yeah.
So like that's the other, I could go on and on about just the amazing woman that she's becoming. But I remember having this really distinct like melancholy type of sadness when I saw my daughter growing up. Like when she was leaving toddler. Just being like a pure baby or toddler and like starting to like become a little girl.
Yeah.
I was just like feeling like this like sadness, and I really like was like, why do I feel this way?
Even to the point now, if I bring up a picture of Soleil at that age,
it makes me feel sad.
She's like, she starts to tear up, and I'm like, what's going on in there?
Yeah. And I think it's the realization, like, we as women, we carry so much, in the world. In particular, really the emotions of the world. We carry the grief and the anxiety like the rainbow, right? And I think when we talk about emotional IQ, or when people say, oh, you're being emotional, which, by the way, it's like a super annoying when I hear people say that. Because it's meant
in it all the time.
Well, so we can go down the context with that.
Maybe I'm a little slow motion.
But in most situations, when somebody is using that as a form of defense against someone else and telling them that you're being too emotional, I think what they're trying to say is that you're not being emotionally accurate. And so I feel like that's more of the statement that should be said. Like, your emotions are not accurate to what's going on in the situation right now.
Being emotional is not a bad thing.
Right.
It's about timing and accuracy,
right.
and is it appropriate?
Right. So if you're hurt or sad, be sad. Don't be angry.
Right.
If you're frustrated, or anxious, that doesn't mean be angry. Like, not
everything has to be angry,
or ecstatically happy.
Yeah.
Like
there's a whole
or void of emotion entirely.
Yeah, there's a whole
rainbow.
Yes,
and I think so if you're an emotional person, meaning you're accurately experiencing and expressing the entire rainbow of emotions, that is actually a really high emotional IQ.
Yeah.
Right? That means that your ability to connect with others, to communicate with others, to understand others, and give them the opportunity to understand you is going to be very high. And I feel like with women, obviously there's a wide array of emotional IQs for women as well. But the sadness I think I felt experience with my daughter versus my 3 sons and watching them grow up was to go, oh my gosh, I know as a woman, what she's going to experience as she continues to grow up.
Carry.
And carry, yes, in those relationships. So for me, that's kind of where it comes from. And so again, just like my parents, I have great parents, and there's so many great takeaways that I have from them, from my mom, from my dad, and what I want to continue with my kids. And then there's certainly a whole bunch of stuff that I've learned through my own life experience that I want to do differently. And one of the big things that I'm doing differently, and to Kristen's point, it's a conscious work in progress, all the time, because there is a huge part of me, even with 3 sons, that I want to placate to them. I want to serve them, and I want to lessen their burden and somehow, make their life easier on them. I mean, I've got my oldest son and my youngest son are my oldest son is mature, so far mature and more responsible, quite frankly, than I am, way beyond my years. And then my youngest, I always joke and say he's like a 45-year-old ex-con in the body of a 5-year-old. These are both really surprisingly independent boys. But I tell you what, one of my boys, if he had his way, he would be a baby that is babied for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
He would be hand-fed. He would have his butt wiped for him for the rest of his life. He would be left to just play and lead this leisurely life of no thinking and no work. And
well, this goes back to the attention to detail thing that we were talking about earlier too. You're talking about the time period of which Soleil's turning from a toddler into a little girl, and knowing as a woman what she's going to have to carry. Why do we carry it? Because we see it.
Yeah.
We see it.
Yeah.
So we carry it as far as everything. Every tab is open in this brain all the time.
Right.
As far as my responsibilities with business, with friendship, with marriage, with kids, with house, everything.
It's basically impossible for a woman to compartmentalize.
Yeah, and men can really do that well.
Yeah.
So they don't carry it all at one time, whereas women just do.
Yep. And we there's a reason that we're paying attention to when the permission slips for school need to be filled out, and just
doctor's appointments,
all of those
vet appointments,
little tiny things, those little details of life. But kind of circling back to talk about my one son who would just love to be babied the rest of his life. So he's that way. And then, by the way, to top it off, boy, oh boy, is he cute. And I know I'm biased because I'm his mom, but there is not a single person in his life, teachers, any adult, that has been around him.
Hold on, his big brown eyes had me twisted up last weekend over something. I'll just tell you that. He's so
the
cute.
Cheeks and the eyes and the sweet talk and he's so snuggly.
And he's so sensitive.
Yes. Oh my God. He's so in tune with the feelings of every single person around him. So he's got all these beautiful, amazing, endearing qualities that can just let me tell you what, if I wasn't paying attention, I would just fall prey to just letting him go on for the rest of his life thinking mommy's here as a woman to do everything for you and to placate to your needs and serve you like a little prince. And then guess what? That little prince grows up one day and then he's in a relationship and he's already a ladies boy, I guess we'll call him at this point. I'm convinced that he's going to be the one all the girls are coming over, different girls every week crying because she's convinced that he loved her. So I know he's got that future. He's also said he wants 6 children. Lord, he's 6 years old, or 8 years old, and he's already saying he wants 6 kids. And so I know he has this life as a father ahead of him, and I would assume as a partner as well. And he, like, I don't want, the last thing that I want is my future daughter-in-laws or partners, or whatever their situation is in life in the future, saying, I am not going to be to you what your mother was.
Yeah. How many times do we say that as women? Like, just talking to our peers. How many times do we say, there's memes out there, for God's sake, on Facebook that's like, you know, I know what it's like to...
And there's, like, legit animosity, I feel like, between daughters and daughter-in-laws, or that relationship specifically, for that reason.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, man, you really screwed your son up because you babied him and you treated him like this little prince his entire life, and now he wants that for me, and I'm not giving that to him.
Yeah. Because I've got so much other stuff to do right now. I've got to work. And by the way, the economy has met right up with the cost of living has met right up with our desire to work, because now we have to, pretty much.
Right. And so, I mean, listen, guys, at the end of the day, a family dynamic of two parents raising children and both are working can absolutely work without any neglect to kids, if in fact there's a genuine equal partnership of every single aspect of their life. Every single aspect.
Just to share, like, personally on that note, I went through the evolution myself of trying to decide, do I want to be a stay-at-home mom? Do I want to work? What does that look like? How would I manage being a mom too? And when I figured out, when I wasn't working, I carried the bulk of that stuff, and because Archie was working. And then when I started getting more involved in the business and evolving there, and it becoming like a full-time and sometimes more than full-time thing for me, it was a huge shift for us. For me to consciously be like, we have to split this stuff because I just cannot do it all. I'm one person.
And really speaking up, right?
Yeah.
And, and part of, by the way, guys, let me give you, if you're looking, men or women out there, if you're looking for a specific example of what we mean by emotional connection, feeling connected, feeling cared for, feeling protected and safe, I'll give you a specific example, which is to say, let's say that, you know, you got two working parents, there's an agreement, there's actual communication and conversations, and there's like good communication that exists for the most part between that couple. And there's an agreement that's made, let's say, for example, about what happens when the kids are sick.
Yeah.
This, at that point, is if you have an agreement in place, whether you're alternating, you know, whether it's, hey, let's have a conversation about it. But the rule is no assumptions.
Right.
Right? We're making no assumptions that the mother or the father is the default parent when it comes to the last minute, unavoidable, you know, situation of having a sick child. And I think, like, when, as women, part of how we feel cared for is to not force us into that project manager, remind you, bring up the conversation again. And, you know, because there's a lot of moms, and I'm not one of them, because if you're watching my videos, I don't subscribe to guilty parenting whatsoever, but most moms do, and I've learned that. And it's very difficult because that's what makes a woman and a wife feel uncared for and unconnected with. When it's like, you know that it's already hard for me to not be the one and only one dealing with that sick child. Caring for them at home, taking them to the doctors, calling the doctors.
Like, I already feel like I should.
Right. And so you know that about me. So why don't you care, and why aren't you connected with me and protective of me enough to remember?
Yeah.
And to just do what you're supposed to do in that situation. Instead, I feel very taken for granted, and I feel very, you know, taken advantage of, because you're using to your advantage the fact that I already feel guilty and responsible and a natural role to be the only person caring for my sick child, when in fact it's both of our kids.
Archie and I have really good communication for the most part, and when I speak up, it's always, most of the time, we have arguments just like every other spouse, but like for the most part, when I do speak up, he responds to that. But boy, oh boy, do I really appreciate the times where he is the initiator. And he's the one that's like, if somebody, like, you know, gets sick, if he's the one to say, so what's your work day look like tomorrow? I'm like, oh, somebody else is thinking about it, you know? Instead of having to, in my own head, by myself, go to this land of like, okay, what meetings do I have tomorrow? Can I cancel? Should I ask him to cancel? Why is it my responsibility to ask him to cancel? It should be a mutual conversation.
He should think of it too.
And then when he thinks of it, I'm like, yay, Like, it takes so little.
And you feel, it's not just a yay, it's literally like,
I feel like I have a partner. I feel like I have a partner versus a staff member that I'm directing. Like, it's so important in marriage.
Yeah.
So important.
Yep. So again, kind of like we're coming to the end here, just kind of bringing this whole thing full circle. Like, women, I want to just remind you, if you or anybody in your life know that you're dealing with those frustrations that we talked about in the beginning, the disappointments or the challenges in a relationship, and you're saying like, I wish this were different, then take that responsibility into your own hands with raising your sons.
Yes.
Raise them.
What are the conversations you're having with your sons?
Well, it's also taking action.
And taking action and not waiting on them.
It's mostly action, because I think with children, it's what they see. It's not what you say. I mean, obviously the conversations, but what does this mean? Make sure that your boys have the same role, gender roles aside, have equal amount of responsibility in the home. Okay? When it comes to their jobs for your family, you live in this house, we all have jobs to do. Mommy and daddy are not here to do everything for you. You dirty things, you can clean them up too. And that goes for boys or girls. Gender specific things out the door, and then consistency around the expectation. And then the other part is teaching them to pay attention to detail. Mm-hmm. So when you see your kid, like my youngest loves to do, and I literally, this is like one of the many things on, like, it just drives me insane. My little one loves to leave his damn socks all over the house. Okay? Everywhere. There's not a single place in this house, in random places, that I don't find one of his socks, and they're never together, by the way. They're always like individually places all over my house. So to me now, instead of just getting pissed off about it and then even worse, picking up his socks for him, I never pick up those socks. I will make sure, stop whatever it is you're doing, little boy, and come and pick up every single sock, piece of clothing, and toy that you're leaving around this house. Stop what you're doing. I don't care if you're in the middle of playing. I don't care if you're in the middle of watching something you want to watch. I don't care if you're in the middle of eating. I don't care what you're doing. Stop what you're doing and come pick up your own mess.
Yeah.
And like, it's interesting that the point that you make about how girls like will kind of feel like, I have seen my daughter be very tempted to do things for her little brothers, like do things for them. And I've had to like stop her. I'm like, no, don't get that for them. Don't pick that up for them. Don't defend them. Don't make an excuse for them. They just like that wouldn't fly for you. It's not going to fly for them. So really raising your boys the same exact way that you would raise your daughters in terms of their responsibilities and paying attention to detail. So one of my big things I'm going through with my 12-year-old right now, my 12-year-old son, is planning. Yeah. The P word. I know that's so dirty for so many people out there, but it is, I'm making sure that he's learning how to plan. I refuse to continue to be his messenger, his private messenger, to call his friends' parents and make all the plans for them. Nope. Oh, you would like to go over to your friend's house? Great. Call them. Oh, you need a ride from somebody? Great. You call them. You text message them. You need to figure out like where you're going, what you're doing? Good. Go get with your friends and you guys come up with a plan and then bring it back to your parent, each one of them bring it back to their parents and get us to approve it.
She is going to make her future daughter-in-law so proud.
Yes. Yes. And that's the thing.
They're going to be like, what is this work of art that you present me?
The future male or female partners to my children to come back to me and say, like, this person is like a real partner to me. I feel so cared for. I feel so protected. I feel they do the right kind of leadership. You men, you want to make sure that you're a leader in your house? Take initiative to plan dates. Lead that. Lead it by planning a vacation. Take the initiative to reach out to teachers and to doctors. You want to lead in that way. That's the kind of leaders. Yeah, like reach out for and schedule the parent-teacher conferences. Like, I mean, do all those details. Take the initiative to lead in the things in life that actually matter to how a family functions together.
We just have to, folks. We have to, in order to have traditional marriages continue to thrive. And I mean, we really just don't have a choice. We have to make a difference with the way that we're raising our sons.
100%. And by the
Our
way,
foremothers, not our forefathers, but our foremothers did the work for us. We got to do the work for our sons. We got to plan the work and pay attention and make sure they're paying attention. And boy, is it hard, because I want to wait on that little boy. He is so damn cute. He is so cute, and he knows it and everything. I'm like, what do you need? What do you want? And then I'm like, I need to be teaching him to do for himself.
Mm-hmm. So we'll call it a wrap on this one. And as part of the wrap-up process, I will say, I'm sure that there are a lot of women that have incredible male partners in their life who do amazing things. The reason I know that is because I have an amazing, wonderful husband. Not perfect. Kristen has an amazing, wonderful husband. Not perfect.
You're perfect, aren't you?
Are far from perfect in terms of being.
You are perfect. You're a star.
No, definitely not. It's a constant work in progress, right, for all of us. But I will say, it is part of paying attention to the conversations that I'm having with people in my life. It's a big part of observing, like, what's happening, sitting back. And I talk a lot here, but I also do a lot of listening in my life. And I do a lot of, like, observing of what's going on with people.
Pay attention, folks. Don't just cruise through life. Let's leave this place a better place than where we found it.
Yes, absolutely. So, once again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you, Angela.
For being my guest
star. Have a great day. I am a star. Have a great day, y'all.